Once we have the memory card, we want to double click into the memory card. Now, as we go through this process, you want to be able to make a distinction between anytime you double click and single click. You want to be very careful. One thing, even if you get frustrated, don't get click happy. What happens a lot of times is people get really frustrated and they just, I don't know why it's not working. And honestly, it can cause more problems. You can go down a rabbit hole where you won't be able to come back from that rabbit hole. So be very patient, give your computer time to load, because we're going to be dealing with fairly big files that actually might, depending on the computer that you have, take a second to load. So first things first, double click into your memory card. In your memory card, you're going to see some type of full folder structure. That structure, you're going to find a folder called DCIM. Usually most of your memory cards are going to have this folder. In that folder, you might see another set of folder structures. Me, I've used this same memory card with different brands of cameras. Canon, Fuji, Sony, and Panasonic even, I think. This memory card has been used across the board. Every one of those cameras creates a different type of folder. I know that so you see here, I have Fuji on some of these folders. So I'm actually going to go to a folder and find some photos. I think I have some photos in this folder here. Okay, so I have some photos here. The photos, when I double click into my folder, show up here. I see them here, and actually I noticed that these are from Sony. I shot these with Sony. These were Sony files, because I can tell that by the extension. So that's a word that you can write down. File extension is after the dot. So dot and the 3 letters is called a file extension. It's the way the computer identifies what program is used to open or manipulate that file. Everything has a file extension. Photoshop file is .psd. Adobe Acrobat file is .pdf. You know, a file that has transparency, .png. A video file, .mp4. So file extensions are very important. If you take away the file extension, the computer won't know what to do. The file extension is the identifier. So it's very important to have them. And in this case, it identifies what brand the camera shot the photos, and then also what the photos are, just period. Okay. So I have some photos here, and what I'm going to do, so that this moves fairly quickly, is I'm only going to select a few of the shots. So I do that by how I did mine. There's a couple different ways you can do this. I select the first one, I hold shift, I select the last one in the grouping. You can also draw a box in the empty space around the photos that you would like to select. And so that's another way that you can select them. Once I have them selected, what's going to be your friend in Lightroom, and when dealing with moving forward, any program, is right or secondary click. Right or secondary click. Now, if you have a mouse, it's really easy. It's the right side of the mouse. But I know not all trackpads, your settings are set up right. But usually secondary click is when you tap your trackpad with 2 fingers. Okay, once I have my selection, I'm going to right click on my selection. You might get the pinwheel. Give it a second. Don't freak out if you get the pinwheel at any time in this process. That means just let your computer think. Or if you get the hourglass, just let it think. It's just what it is for some of these programs. Okay, so once you have your photos selected, you have this menu. Can you guys all see the secondary menu on the screen? Yeah, okay. So you're gonna go down to export. Sorry, not export, apologies. Copy to. I haven't clicked anything. I'm just hovering over the option. And then I'm going to go down to choose folder, and I'm just going to click once on choose folder at the bottom of the secondary menu. Once you go to copy, choose folder. What's going to happen is that Finder will open up after you get the pinwheel, maybe. And what's going to happen is, or Explorer if you're on a Windows computer. What we're going to do now is we are going to place our files. So remember I talked about the folder structure? What I do is I make the folder structure as I am saving my files. So what I'm gonna do first on this left-hand side here is I'm gonna find my hard drive because that's where I wanna put these photos. And then on my hard drive, I'm gonna find the folder that I've designated, FITM, and then I'm gonna find Spring 2020, photo. I'm gonna make a new folder. Down in the bottom left-hand side, it gives me the option to make a new folder. And I'm gonna call this folder Light Study Demo. You guys can just call it Light Study, or if you need to make that main folder, you haven't made it yet. If you haven't made it yet, the digital photography, you can make it here as well on your hard drive. The good thing is that once it's made, you just find it, click into it, and make the new folder, like how I already had my FITM folder already here. So I'm just gonna call this Light Study Demo. And then inside of Light Study Demo, I'm gonna make sure I have it selected here. I'm gonna make one more new folder, and I'm gonna call that folder Raw. Okay, I'm gonna click on the Raw folder, and then I'm gonna click Open. What that does is now I'm copying my photos to the folder that I've designated for them to go to. You get a progress bar here, everything copies over. You can do this process, the same process in Finder or Explorer. It just looks slightly different, but the concept is the same. We want to move our files from a memory card into a appropriately named folder on our hard drive. That's the first step. We haven't touched Lightroom. We haven't done anything except move our folders, our files from the memory card to an appropriately named folder on our hard drive or on our computer. Please do that step first. If you skip that step, it gets really confusing. And Lightroom won't alert you that you skipped this step. Actually, it'll let you keep on going, but it will let you keep on going and let you get confused. So please do this step first. It starts everybody off in the same place, so we can always track back to the same place and understand where you're coming from. So I want to give you guys a second to copy the photos over. Does anybody need another second to copy your photos over, or has everybody done it already? Cool. When mine's done, mine's moving a little bit slow. Again, please be prepared to have patience with your computer. We're using programs that are very intensive on your computer. Once it's copied, just for purposes so my computer can chill, I'm gonna close Adobe Bridge. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for a second. I'm just gonna quit Adobe Bridge because we won't need it once it's copied. So I'm just gonna quit Adobe Bridge since I copied my photos. And okay, now the next step is Lightroom. Now, before we get into Lightroom, I'm gonna give you a little explanation of what Lightroom is, and then we're gonna take a quick breather, let your brain think, and then we're gonna get into Lightroom. We go pretty fast and it's pretty intensive. So Lightroom, here's a quick explanation if I could, and if you need me to stop, please let me know. So what we're dealing with raw files is we're dealing with really heavy files. Heavy, like physically heavy, but translated to your hard drive. Your hard drive has an infinite amount of space. The heavier files that get put into it, the more it gets filled up. The more it gets filled up, the less your computer can function, and the harder your computer has to work. Think of it like this. If you have a garage and it's full of boxes and full of stuff, and then you say, I need to find one thing in that garage. The more stuff that's piled on top of each other, the harder it is to get to that one thing, especially if that stuff is heavy. So the harder it is to get to that one thing, the longer it takes to get to that one thing. So having a lot of stuff and then having all that stuff be heavy becomes problematic for you. It's similar when you're dealing with files on your computer. Let's compare it to a program that you probably all know, Photoshop. When you have a Photoshop file that is tons of layers and becomes really big, it can make your computer slow down. And it can be really hard to work in that Photoshop file. Really difficult, really hard. And so working with large files and working with a lot of large files becomes problematic. So what program developers have done with programs that require you to work with large files, and a lot of them, is they've created an ability for programs to reference. So reference, that's something you can write down. Lightroom employs or implements referencing. This is what this is. It's a little bit of computer magic. Imagine that garage that's full of boxes and stuff, but imagine you had a directory and you could locate the exact location based on height, width, and depth and box for the thing you were looking for. Like in your head, it just popped up in front of you. And then you could imagine if you could then see inside of that box and actually look at the thing you're trying to access and get to, and move that thing around, paint it, dust it off, manipulate it without ever touching it and moving it. I mean, if you could do that, you would probably be like, you'd probably go to Hogwarts or something. You'd be a wizard and you could do that. But that's what's happening in Lightroom with your files. So what Lightroom does is it makes a record of where your files are. It's in a folder called digital photography, in another folder called light study, in another folder called raw, and the name of the file is DSC 0001923. So you have a directory. Then it implements its magic and it shows you a preview of the file and allows you to manipulate the preview. It allows you to do things to the preview. That is referencing. So when we import our files into Lightroom, we are not moving our files into Lightroom. All we're doing is giving Lightroom visibility to the location of the files. Lightroom sees where the files are and makes a catalog reference of where the files are located, and then shows you a preview so that you can open. In my case, if I shoot one soccer game, I'll have 2,000 photos. I can open all 2,000 photos at once and not have my computer explode. So referencing. There are other programs in Adobe Suite that use this and implement this feature. One of them is called InDesign, Adobe InDesign. It uses referencing because when you create a publication of multiple pages in high resolution photography, you're going to have huge files. Sometimes your publications become 100 pages. So InDesign uses referencing as well. So there's this magic that's happening, okay? Any questions about referencing? I just want to make sure it kind of makes sense. If it doesn't, please ask me, to clarify any part of that. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, so there's one other part of referencing that makes it a little bit, it's one detail that you have to make sure happens every time you use the program. And the best analogy I can give to physical location is the library, a physical library. A physical library has its own version of a reference catalog. It's actually called a card catalog. It tells you where the books are in the library by row, by section, by subject matter, by IBSN number. The books in that library are cataloged. And if you didn't have the card catalog, it'd be very difficult to navigate the library. You wouldn't know where the books are. So the thing is, though, if you remove the books but keep the catalog does you no good, because now you're looking at a reference, but there's no books. They're not there. And vice versa. If you remove the catalog but keep the shelves of books, you don't know where anything is. So you have to keep your source, your photos, wherever they are, whether they're on your hard drive or whether they're on your computer, you have to keep the source connected and always the same. Because if anything changes, either your hard drive disconnects or you change the name of the folder, Lightroom is going to go, wait, where'd everything go? I don't know where your photos are, and it's going to disconnect, basically. It's going to disconnect everything. So that's the one caveat to referencing, is that you must always have the source connected and be the same as when you told it in the beginning, or you have to reconnect the source, retell Lightroom where your photos are. So that's an overview of what Lightroom is doing. It becomes a little confusing because certain other programs like Photoshop, when you put something into Photoshop and save the file, everything is saved into the file. It's not the case with Lightroom. Lightroom is just showing you a preview that you can edit. So the first step in Lightroom is to import. That's the nomenclature, import. We're going to import our photos into Lightroom. So what we're doing is like if a physical book, a new book comes to the librarian writes and registers the book into the system. That's importing the book into the catalog so that now that catalog includes that book. That's what we're doing with Lightroom. We're importing the photos into the digital catalog so Lightroom knows where your photos are. Okay, so one more thing, we're gonna go through the import and then I'll give you guys a little quick break. Okay, so let me share my screen real quick. Okay, everybody see my screen? Cool. Lightroom. When you open Lightroom, you're going to have a very similar layout to Adobe Bridge. 3 columns, 1, 2, and 3. I have photos in my Lightroom, so there's going to be something in the middle. You guys might not see anything in the middle. It might just be gray. There might not be anything. And you might see not 3 columns. You might see something like this, where, sorry, why did it do that? Sorry. Huh. Weird. Okay. You might see something like this. Wow. Sorry, my computer is being, screen share is being funky. Can you guys still see my Lightroom? Yeah, okay. It's weird. If you don't see 3 columns, on the right hand side and on the left hand side, there's a little small triangle. That small triangle collapses and opens the menu for that side. Lightroom loves these small triangles, and those triangles control the collapsing and opening of each element. So the top menu can be closed as well, and also the bottom menu. So just so you know, that might be the case if your screen looks a little bit different than mine. Okay, so when we open Lightroom, we get these 3 columns here, here, and here. They change in what they do based on which menu you're in from the top right-hand corner. So up here we have Library, Develop, Map, Book, Slideshow, Print, and Web. The 2 sections, or the 3 sections that we're going to deal with is Library, Develop, and Print. Library, Develop, and Print. Right now, the first thing that we're going to do in Lightroom is we're going to click on Library. So when you click on Library, you're going to see this option down here in the bottom left-hand corner pop up for you. This option, it says import. So if you guys remember, that's the process that we're working with. We're going to import. So what we want to do is click import, and we have a different screen pop up. It still has the layout of 3 columns, but it's slightly different. So I want everybody to click on import. And if you're not at this screen, let me know. And I can help you get there.
Still downloading.
Okay.
I don't know why, but yeah.
It's a fairly big program, so it might take a second to download. So if you can just take notes, I'm also recording this lecture so that we have these steps recorded. Anybody else not here at the import screen?
So this is where I would come in, just checking.
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay, cool. So and I would select all.
Hold on, don't select anything
Okay.
yet. Again, I'm going to walk you through the steps because if you jump ahead, there might be just a confusion in the steps. So just have the import screen open, just like this. Okay, so on the left-hand side is where we're going to find our photos. We need to locate the photos that we put into the folder for the project, okay? We don't want to find our memory card. We want to find where we saved our photos, okay? So in my instance, on the left-hand side, I know what my hard drive is named. So I'm going to hit the triangle to open up my hard drive right here. I'm going to find the FITM folder because that's where I saved my photos. And then I'm going to find the Spring folder, photo, and then I'm going to find Light Study and the raw folder. I'm going to click on the raw folder and I'm going to see my photos come up in the middle screen. So I want you guys to find your photos on the left-hand side. Those of you that do have Lightroom, let me know who still needs a second to find your photos. Okay. Looks like everybody might be there. The benefit of what we did by organizing our photos outside of Lightroom is that once we get into the folder where our photos are, we already know we want all of these photos because we've already decided that this is what we want to import into Lightroom. Another thing I said on the first day, don't delete your photos when you shoot. We want the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we want to import the good, the bad, and the ugly into Lightroom. Lightroom is the area where we decide what's good, bad, and ugly. We want to decide that in Lightroom. So we're going to import everything in the raw folder for this project. The thing is, there's one more organizational thing we need to do before we import. So inside of Lightroom, internally, we need to create some sort of organization that groups these references together. So on the left-hand side, you might see something like this. I'm sorry, right-hand side. You're going to see the word file handling on the right-hand side. You want to drop down the arrow. And then you want to select the option that says add to collection. Now I have a bunch of collections here. Yours will probably be empty because this is the first collection you're going to create. After you check the box that says add to collection, you want to press the plus button. It's going to open up this window. Now, any idea what we should name this collection for this particular project?
Lightroom practice.
For your guys' case, Lightroom, Light Study, This is the light study. This is going to be the place where your light study photos live. So you want to name this light study. And then I'm gonna spring. Okay. After you name it appropriately, you're gonna hit create. You're gonna see the collection pop up here on the right-hand side. And then the next step after this is to hit import. Now, if you forget to do this and say you just jump to import, we can always go back and create the grouping. So all is not lost. But I'm gonna hit import, and what you're gonna see is on the top left is your progress bar, and then all the photos will populate, but only the photos that you imported in the center of the screen. One last thing, and then we'll take a quick break. On the left-hand side here, there's a couple options. Catalog, folders, collections, and publish services. We're never gonna use catalog, the first one, so you might as well just keep it closed. Folders, we're never gonna use, so you can keep that closed as well. Publish services, we're not gonna use. The only thing on the left-hand side, the drop down here, once you're in the library, that we're gonna use is collections. Now, again, I have a lot. You're only gonna have one right here right now because we just created your first collection. But just know that the other things can get very confusing. Okay. All right. So far what we've done is we've imported our photos into Lightroom. They are not actually the photos. They are a preview of the actual photo file, but we can see them in their entirety in Lightroom. Okay. All right. That's been an hour of me talking straight. I'm going to give you guys a break, 15-minute break. And when we come back, we're going to get into what to do next and learn how to save these files and turn them in. It's the second half of the process. So yeah, 15-minute break. It's 4:34 right now. So we'll come back. We'll just say we'll come back at 4:50. Just round it up. Come back at 4:50, and then we will get into the next part. Cool? All right.
Cool.
See you guys in a little bit. So we're back in Lightroom, and we're in the library tab up here at the top. This shows us our photos. The one section I want to show you here is down at the bottom, we have something called a film strip. So if you don't see the film strip, if the bottom of your screen looks something like this, basically it's collapsed, and you need to click on the triangle and open up the film strip. In the film strip, what you'll see is you'll see all of your photos that you've imported. Another thing you'll see at the very top of the film strip, Lightroom really likes small font and small indicators. It's a little bit annoying, but it can also mean that you might miss something. So I'm going to try to point out the small little indicators when it's available to be pointed out. Okay. So what we're going to do here you have at the top, it says previous import. And so basically it's saying that what I'm looking at in my film strip is the last thing that I imported. If I change this, I can select a catalog, or a collection, and I can select the collection that I've imported. On the left-hand side here, you can also select the collection. So right now, my collection I have a bunch of them, but if I find the collection for this one, I named it Light Study. They get organized in alphabetical order. So I'm gonna go find the Light Study Spring 2020. If I click on it, previous import changes to collection and the name of the collection. So right here lets you know what photos you're actually looking at in your film strip, so you can keep track. An example of how this becomes fairly important. If I change my film strip to all photos, all photographs, in my Lightroom, my library of photos, I have, what is that number? 151,000 photos. If I didn't organize them into collections, there would be no way that I'd keep track of all the photos in my Lightroom catalog. So now I'm showing in my film strip all the photos that are in my Lightroom catalog. But when I want to narrow it down, I go and find the specific collection, and now I only see those particular photos. So collections are very powerful. They help you organize your shots. All right, explanation of collections. So when we're talking about steps in the process, the first step was taking the photos off of your memory card and putting them onto your computer or your hard drive. The next step was importing the photos into Lightroom from your computer or your hard drive. The next step is sorting through your shots. So in order to sort through our shots, we're going to go to the develop menu. Now the develop menu changes our view in the middle a little bit, slightly. We only see one shot, one photo. And if you click down on the film strip once and use your arrows on your keyboard, you'll actually flip through your shots. Now, depending on how big your files are or how powerful your computer is, it could take a second for the photo to actually load in the center of the screen, okay? So these shots, this is a very quick way you can actually flip through all the shots that you shot and see them on a much larger screen in the center of your screen. Now, the Light Study is a unique project. Because the Light Study was an experiment, we're gonna want all the photos exported. Normally though, what you do at this point is you pick your best ones. So I'm gonna show you how to pick your best ones, how to only show your best ones. But for Light Study, we're actually going to end up saving and exporting all the photos. This project is a little bit unique. But normally the next step is called picking selects. We want to pick our selects. So in this instance, for this photo shoot, I would go through and pick the shots that I think are worthy enough or make sense for me to try to manipulate and edit. These aren't the best of the best just yet. There's another step in picking the best. But the first step is picking the selects. So there's an action in Lightroom, and it's called flagged, F-L-A-G-G-E-D, flagged as picked. And how you do that is while you're on your photo, if it's one that you want to say, yeah, this might be one that I think I might want to pick in my final bunch, you press the letter P as in pig or pick. What that does is the letter P on your keyboard flags it as pick. Now, remember how I said Lightroom has really tiny indicators? Once you flag a photo as picked, in the film strip, in the top left-hand corner of the thumbnail, you will actually see a white flag. It's really tiny, but it's there. If you want to, say you made a mistake and you accidentally pressed P, you can actually click on that flag and it will go away. So you press the letter P to flag as pick, and then you can click on the flag in the left-hand corner of the thumbnail to unflag the pick. Also know, every action in Lightroom is saved. The history states are unlimited. So there's no need to hit save. There's no need to manually do that. You can always go backwards in Lightroom. Now there's an opposite to flag as pick. There's an action called reject. That's reserved for photos that you don't, they're trash. You don't want to use them. You know you're not going to use it. Might as well flag it as reject, as a rejection. The reason why it's important to flag your rejections is because then you can go back and in one fell swoop, delete all of the photos that don't matter. You can delete all the photos that are rejected. So say the second photo, I didn't want it. How you flag as reject is you press the letter X on your keyboard. And if you notice, again, small, tiny indicators in Lightroom, there's a black flag and the photo is grayed out in your film strip. But just like flagging as pick, if you made a mistake, you can click on the black flag and it'll go away. So nothing is permanent. So don't worry, like you can reject a photo and unreject it and do that type of thing. So normally you would go through everything you shot and pick and reject. Now, say I went through and I picked maybe 6 or 7 photos. I'm just going through right now and picking just for the demo. Okay. Now, I don't want to see the rest of the photos. What you can do is you can filter your film strip view. Again, everything is really small, so sorry if it's hard to see on my screen share. But on the right-hand side of your film strip, there is a little drop-down menu that says filters off. By default, it says filters off. If you click on that, there's an option that says flag. If you select flag, it filters your film strip to just the photos that you picked. And the other photos go away. Now they didn't completely go away, it's just they're not in your current working view. And just like everything else in Lightroom, I can go back by turning my filters off and everything comes back. Sorry, my keyboard is freaking out again. Jeez. Okay, so that's the film strip picking selects. Every other project, you'll pick selects out of what you shoot. For this project, we want to export everything. So we're gonna make sure that you have your film strip selected to filters off so you can see everything, okay? Now, we're gonna get to the export part of this, and there's 2 things we're gonna export. One of those things is something that's carried over from film photography. Now in film photography, you take a bunch of shots and then you pay for all of those shots to be printed. So you gotta save your money and know what you wanna be printed. So a lot of times in film photography, you wanna see a preview of all your shots before you say, hey, print that one really big, print that one really big, and print that one really big. How you do that is you create what's called a contact sheet. A contact sheet basically shows all of your photos in a grid on one piece of paper. So what this does for me is that in the projects moving forward, I'm going to require you to shoot a certain amount of photos for the project, and then require you to turn in as finals a different amount. But how I know that you shot that amount originally is if you show me a contact sheet that shows all of the photos graded that you shot. They're not big, they're really small, but it shows me that you kept shooting and tried and didn't just stop at shooting. Say, if I ask you to turn in 6 photos, that you didn't just shoot 6 photos, that you shot the necessary amount. So how we create a contact sheet, that's the first thing we're gonna do. We're gonna select all. So there's a quick key for select all. It's Command or Control A. It selects all of the photos in the film strip. Let me know if you guys can still see my screen, or if it delays, let me know. So you're gonna select all. All the photos get highlighted gray. Then we're gonna go to the print menu.
We can't understand you.
Completely.
Okay. Let me give the internet a
Can't hear
second
you
to
at all
catch up.
right now.
Can you guys hear me now? Are we back?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Lovely internet. Okay.
So the last thing we heard you say was, so Command A, all of the photos in the bottom of your Lightroom, and then you wanted us to make a contact sheet. So
Okay.
Explain that.
After you select all, you're going to go to the print menu at the top right, and I'll share my screen again. And if I get wonky again, just put it in the chat or shout, hey, you sound like a robot. Let me know. Okay, so your print menu is going to look different than mine. I've already done this. So when I go back to the print menu, it has my previous settings. So for you guys, the good thing is, the other good thing about Lightroom is once you do something once, it keeps your previous setting no matter what. So you can get into some habits because it's always going to be there. But for you guys, because this is the first time, on the left-hand side, you're going to go to Template Browser. It's right here on the left-hand side. So if you look at my cursor, Template Browser. And then you're going to see an option that says Lightroom Templates. So you're going to open that option. So Template Browser, Lightroom Templates. Once you're in Lightroom Templates, you're going to select the option that says 4x5 contact sheet. And then you should see something similar to what's on my screen in the middle, as long as you have all your photos selected. If anybody's having any trouble getting to this point, let me know.
If Lightroom still isn't working, like still hasn't downloaded for me, like I was able to download everything else. Is that normal? Should it take this long?
Depending on your internet
might have
speed,
slowed it up.
you're also doing the Zoom call. So it might just be taking a sec. The program is fairly large. It's about 2 gigabytes. So it might be something you might have to download when we're off the Zoom call.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
but like I said,
also personally not able to. Hello?
yeah, go ahead. Listening.
Sorry, I'm not able to find I see, like, if you go to the top, there's a thing that says print, but
Yes.
I'm not able to find what you were just talking about.
Okay, so on the left-hand side, you're going to see 3 options: preview, template browser and collections. Do you see that on the left-hand side?
I see catalog, folders, collections, public services.
Okay, so
Publish
click on
services.
print, and then your left-hand side is going to change.
Okay.
Do you see template browser now?
Yes.
Okay,
I see
open
template. Yeah, user templates.
and then no,
Oh.
Lightroom templates.
Okay. Oh yeah, yeah.
And then click on 4x5 contact sheet.
I'm sorry, you cut out.
4x5 contact sheet.
Perfect. Thank
Yeah.
you.
No problem. So
Perfect.
the thing about Lightroom, which it is kind of, the more professional that programs get, the less visual identifiers happen that you've changed screens. So the one thing I know in Lightroom is things change, but look exactly the same. And so sometimes it's very confusing because the identifier that you've changed locations is not very evident. In this case, the only identifier that we are in a different window is the print word at the top of the screen that's slightly changed color. So if there is anything like that, please stop me and say, hey, I can't find it, and we'll try to get you to the right place. Okay. Okay. So we have the contact sheet preview. In the center of our screen, it tells me that this is page 1 of 2. That means there's more than one page of this grid, and that this is 1 of 2. So on the right-hand side, we need to basically save this as a file that you can turn in. So I'm going to close my windows. I'm going to close my windows and my options here, and I'm going to use the option that says print job on the right-hand side. So I want everybody to get to this point where I'm at, where your print job is open, not collapsed like this, but open, where you see print job on the right-hand side. Now, if you have all of the other options open before print job, you actually might not even see the word print job. It might be hidden like that, and you have to scroll until you see it. One quick way is to close everything else that you're not using. So the only thing we're using in this instance is print job. Anybody not have this open or can't find it? Okay. So again, everything is really small and tiny, and it's hard to notice where it is, but really small here in gray letters, it says print to, and you can select an option next to it. It's defaulted to printer, but you want to change it to JPEG file. The good thing is that once you change it, it's always going to be there. You won't have to go back and find this again and change it to JPEG file. It's going to be there. All right. There's a couple more things you're just going to change. And like I said, once you change them, they will always be this way. You're going to set the resolution. You're going to set the resolution to 72 ppi. What that does is that makes it small so that we can share it digitally via email, upload it to Canvas, those type of things. And to make it even smaller, because the contact sheet, again, I don't need to see quality. I just need to see the quantity that you shot, so it doesn't really matter. So we can keep this file size really small. So we're going to change the percentage of the image quality to 60. Again, this is in line so that we can make really small files. After you do that, you're going to hit print to file down here, or it might just say print. at the bottom of your screen in the bottom right-hand corner. And it's going to open up your Finder Explorer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my organizational structure. I'm going to find the folder where I saved my raw files for this project, but I'm not going to put this file in the raw folder. I'm going to make a new folder in the project folder. Call it exports. And I'm going to name my file exactly what it is. Light Study Contact Sheet. Now, what I want you guys to get in the habit of is not using spaces. Notice, in my file name, I put dashes. I would like you guys to use dashes or underscores, no spaces. And every time you name a file, I would like you to put your first initial and your last name in the file name. So name the file exactly what it is. Light Study Contact Sheet, your name. First initial, last name. You hit save, and then Lightroom shows you the export process for the contact sheet in the top left-hand corner up here. When that bar is done, it's done. The contact sheet is created. And I can show you that by sharing my entire screen. Exports folder, Light Study. Here are my contact sheet files saved out with all the photos. Okay, that's the first part of your submission. The next part is we want to see your selects larger. We want to see the photos that are the ones that you are turning in to be graded. In the case of this project, we want to see everything. So normally what you would do is you're going to go back to develop. You're going to filter to your flagged photos, and you're only going to export your flagged photos. But in this case, for this project, we want everything. So we're going to turn our filters off. We're still going to select all. And you're going to right click. Here's where right click comes back into play. So to take a step back, we've switched from the print menu to the develop menu. We've selected all of our photos in the film strip. We're going to right click. We're going to hover over export, and we're going to click export. So once we click export, again, I got here by right clicking on my selection of photos, a window pops up. Now, at this point, again, once we set some settings, Lightroom is going to remember your settings, so it makes it easier the second time you do it. But because this is the first time we're doing this, we have to go through every step. So everybody follows along with me. I would like you to collapse all of the options in this window right here. So your screen should look similar to mine, where all of these options are collapsed. Okay. Does anybody have any issue getting to this point? Unmute yourself, and because I can't see you guys, and let me know if there are any issues. Cool. All right. The very first thing you want to do is this option here. Again, everything is still tiny and small. It's just the way it is. Export to right here. You want to select hard drive. That's the first step. You won't have to do this ever again. That will be set to hard drive every time you open the export window. The first option we are going to open up is export location. And the very first thing you're going to do is select from this drop-down menu here, export to, you're going to select specific folder. Specific folder. You're going to uncheck put in subfolder. So by default, you have a blue check here. You want to click it so it goes away. You won't have to do that again either. That will stay that way. The thing you will have to change for every project is where we are going to export these photos. So in this instance, we're going to hit choose, and it's going to open a very familiar screen. We've seen this multiple times in this process. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to find my folder for this project. Once I do that, I'm going to select the exports folder, and I'm going to make a new folder. Now, I've talked a lot about in this process about sharing files and how we share the file. Now, these files are going to be shared. Can anybody tell me how these files are going to be shared?
As JPEGs?
We're going to export them as JPEGs, but quite literally, how are you guys going to send me or share with me these files? How do you guys turn in work for school?
Submit them on Canvas, but
Submit them on Canvas. So
that
are you handing me physical files?
kind of.
They're not physical. You're not printing the photos and putting them in my hand. So the opposite of physical is digital. You are sharing them in a digital way. Anything you email, text, send through the computer, upload to a website, that's all digital. And so there are two different ways we can consume these photos or share the photos. You can print the photos and show them physically to somebody, or you can text them, email them, upload them via the internet. Those two ways require two different ways of exporting because of what we talked about last week about photos being made up of dots, pixels. You need more pixels to print photos than you do to send photos digitally via email and text or uploading to Canvas. So because of that, we have to export our photos in different ways depending on the method of sharing. In this instance, what we're going through right now, I would like you guys to upload these photos to Canvas. I don't want you to print them. So we are going to share these photos via the web or digital. So what I would like you to do is group the photos based on how you're going to share them. In this instance, you're going to share these via the web or digitally, you're not printing them. So we're gonna make a folder in our exports folder called digital. I'm gonna name it digital. You guys can name it web, you can name it canvas, you can name it whatever makes sense for your thinking of organization. For the photos that are saved specifically for sharing via the web. So I've made my digital folder and then I'm gonna hit choose. So we've picked our photo location. That happens differently, different location for every project because you wanna save your photos in the correct folder. Okay. The next step is file name. We need to name our files. What we're gonna do is we're gonna select this option here that says rename to, and you're gonna select the option from the drop-down menu that says custom name dash sequence. So, little rewind, file naming, select rename to, and select the option that says custom name dash sequence. You're gonna see a line that says custom text. That's gonna be the name of your photos. Anybody have an idea of what we should name our photos? We've been doing it this whole time, so it's fairly repetitive, this process.
Light study.
And what else?
Light study Lightroom or something along those lines. Light study Lightroom for web or for submission.
Light study, your first initial, last name, and then yes, you're right. For web, that lets us know that these are the ones for web. So the project name, your name, and the type of photo. Project name, your name, type of photo. Don't use any spaces, again, underscores or dashes. And it gives you a little preview here of what the file name will be. It's gonna add the number for every photo. Okay. You're gonna open file settings and this should be okay. I think it defaults to JPEG anyways, so that's fine. In this instance, for the files that are being saved for the web, you're just gonna select, you're gonna type 75 in the quality section. That's all we do in that section for file settings. The last section before we hit the export button is image sizing. Image sizing. Again, you need to select resize to fit. So under image sizing, resize to fit. From the drop-down menu, you're gonna select this first option that says width and height. And in the width section, you're just gonna type 1920. In the height section, you're gonna delete whatever there and leave it blank. And then in the resolution section, I've talked a little bit about resolution, and there's two numbers, one resolution for printing and 1 resolution for web or digital. Does anybody remember the number for web or digital for resolution?
72.
72. So we want to type 72 in the resolution section because these photos are for sharing on the web. The 1920 width is a general width that I am just using because it's a decent size that can still be saved fairly small, where I can still see your photos fairly high quality. Okay, so that's where the 1920 comes from. The height, we just want the photos, the computer to determine the proportional height as long as the width is 1920. So that's why we leave the height blank. Okay. That's the last setting for exporting for the web. So once you have chosen your location, you set your file name, and we set our size and our resolution, which the resolution is important that you change this to 72, because if it's more than that, your files are going to be a lot larger. You go ahead and hit export, and you will see a progress bar on the top left that will tell you the progress of Lightroom exporting your photos. Depending on your computer, depending on the size of the photos, the amount of the photos will depend on how long this process takes. More powerful computer does this faster. It's just the way it is. It goes faster. My computer, fairly old, so it's chugging along a little bit on 27 photos, but it's almost done. Now, when this is done, you have two things. You have all the photos, the individual JPEGs that you've now exported from Lightroom, smaller for web, and you have your contact sheet. JPEGs, so which are your selects, and your contact sheet. There's one more piece that will be turned in with your assignments. And every assignment that I give you is going to have some sort of written component. So that piece will also be included in your submission. Now, I don't want you to turn in a bunch of individual files. I also don't want you to turn in a zip file, which is where you can contain multiple files in one thing. What I would like you to do is do one more step, and that is where we have Adobe Acrobat comes into play. What we're going to do is take everything we just did, everything we just exported, and combine them into one file. Okay, so I would like you to open Adobe Acrobat. And at the very top, again, Adobe likes to do things small, gray, and white. Doesn't change colors very much. Also, I have dark mode on my computer, so my Adobe Acrobat is dark gray. Yours might be a light gray, same application. But once Adobe Acrobat is open, I want you to go to the option at the top left that says Tools. And you're going to see icons that look very similar to this. Once you get to this section that says Tools, you're going to select the option that says Combine Files. And you click it, and you open a window that looks like this. Now, I like dragging and dropping files. This depends on what you rather. You can click this blue button that says Files, but I do like dragging and dropping files. So I'm going to find the files that I want to include in this document. the first set of files is the exports. So my digital export. So here in my Finder, I have located my files, and I'm going to drag my files into Acrobat. I'm going to select them all, and I'm going to drag them into Acrobat. They populate in Acrobat. But then I'm going to go to the folder with my contact sheet, and I'm also going to drag those files into Acrobat after my photos, my selects. So in Acrobat, I see all my photos and I see my contact sheet. Now there's one more file that I want you guys to include, and that's your write-up. Whether you type that in Pages, Microsoft Word, Google Docs, whatever it may be that you created it in, you can always save or export that file as a PDF. What I would like you to do is do that with your written document and also include that into this particular file. So I'm just going to find a PDF. I'm just going to put the syllabus just for having a PDF. I'm going to drop that in here too. So now you can see I have my PDF, I have my contact sheets, and I have my individual photos. Once you've compiled all your pieces, you're going to go ahead and hit the blue button at the top that says Combine. Once it, you might get a spinning pinwheel or hourglass, but just let it do its thing, and you're going to start to see some green checks. Check off the individual pieces of combining all of these files into one document. Now, this is a tool set that you can use for anything, honestly, when you're trying to share multiple different things with people. A lot of times you have to share your sketches, you have to share photos, you might need to share different pieces of a project. You can always create a single PDF file. Once things are done, this window opens, and again, we see a layout that's very similar to, sorry, I didn't mean to draw that. I see a layout that's very similar to Bridge, Lightroom, 3 columns, left, center, and right. You can open up the pages that are included in the PDF by clicking this little icon that looks like pieces of paper, and you can see the individual files here that you included in your document. If you need to rearrange things, you can drag and drop things here. Now, for your light study, I would like to see your photos in the order that you shot them, so throughout the times of the day. So if you do need to rearrange anything, you can do that here and rearrange the documents in the individual pages. So the last step in this process is to save this file. Now, we want to make sure you save the file. It's still fairly small, so you don't have any issues uploading it to Canvas. So the last step in this process is that we're going to go to File, Save as Other. And the option we're going to select from the Save as Other menu is Reduced Size PDF. Once we click that, you're going to get a few disclaimer boxes that pop up. In this process, just hit yes for everything. So yes on the first disclaimer box, and you're going to find your project folder again. Again, this process repeats itself over and over again. We're always putting our stuff in the proper folder. I'm going to find my project folder. I'm just going to leave it loose in my project folder. And then I'm going to name my file. Again, we repeat the process. Any idea of what we're going to name this file? This is the final submission for this project. What should we name this file?
Light study, first initial, last name.
Light study, first initial, last name. And then what could we add to just identify that this is the final submission?
Final.
Final. Yeah. All right. So you're going to hit, after you name it, I forgot the word, study. My bad. Okay. You're going to hit save. Again, you're going to get a disclaimer box. Adobe wants to know, do you want this to be compatible with everything? You're just going to hit OK. And then the window is going to open up again. What happens is it saves a regular PDF first, and then it saves the reduced size PDF. So in this instance, we're just going to hit save again. Just every time a window pops up, hit OK or save or yes, whatever that equivalent is. And then it's going to ask you, do you want to replace the file that you just saved? You're just going to hit yes. Because the only file we care about is the smaller one, the reduced size one. So hit replace, and Adobe Acrobat shows you its progress at the bottom. When this little pop-up goes away, your file is saved. Again, depending on your computer or how many files it is, will depend on how long this saving process takes. When the saving process is finished, you'll be able to see your file in your project folder. Like so. If I preview it, I have all of my photos. I have my contact sheet of all my photos. And then I also have the written part of my file. This file is what you submit to Canvas. This is how we'll turn in every project. Your selects, your contact sheet, and your written part.